Cheap presence always gets noticed first and valued last. You feel it when you are the one who replies right away, stays late without being asked twice, fixes the awkward moment, smooths the conflict, and somehow still becomes the easiest person to postpone. That pattern is frustrating because it looks generous on the surface, but it creates a quiet kind of disrespect underneath. Picture the office for a second. One person is always available. Someone leans over and says, "Can you handle this too?" Another message comes in after hours. Another favor lands because you are reliable. It feels useful in the moment, but there is friction in it. You can feel yourself disappearing while everyone calls you helpful. That is the trap. Being needed is not the same thing as being respected. So this is about a different kind of value. We are walking through 7 Stoic principles that move you from available to everyone to owned by no one. By the end, you will have a way to stop renting out your worth, protect your inner life, and say no without guilt. Ask one question first. What does my character require here? That question about character is where the whole shift starts. It sounds simple, but it cuts against the script. Most men were handed early. A lot of men were trained to think value means being agreeable, easy to reach, hard to replace. Be the one who stays calm while everyone else gets sloppy. Be the one who works late, absorbs tension, replies fast, and keeps the machine running. At first, that gets rewarded. People praise your reliability. They call you solid. They lean on you more. But there is something awkward hiding inside that praise. The more your value depends on being useful, the more your center begins to fade. That is why Stoicism hits this so cleanly. Epictetus separates what is yours from what never was. Your judgment is yours. Your will is yours. Your moral purpose is yours. Other people's moods, approval, invitations, and shifting opinions are not. The second you build self-respect on external usefulness, your peace gets priced by a market you cannot control. So this is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming sovereign, helpful by choice, steady under pressure, respected because your presence follows lessons, not hunger. Lesson number 1. Stop outsourcing your worth. Worth is not rented. The moment you forget that, a simple request can start feeling like a verdict on who you are. Picture a manager leaning into your desk near the end of the day. Can you stay late again? You are the only one I can count on. One part of you is already tired. Another part wakes up fast. Needed again. Chosen again. Praised again. So you say yes before your body has even caught up. And the resentment shows up later in traffic, when the room is gone and only the cost remains. That is where this gets uncomfortable, and that is why it matters. The extra hour is not the real danger. The real danger is the trade happening underneath it. You are letting someone else's approval price your value. That is not strength. It is emotional rent. The people pleaser serves, but often for a hidden wage. A look of approval. A grateful tone. A sense of being wanted. Stoicism cuts through that fast. Your worth cannot live in someone else's mouth. If praise creates your peace, silence will undo it. Try this line instead. I am willing to help when it aligns with my priorities, but I am not using availability as proof of value. Then, Test it tonight. Write down 3 moments when being needed made you feel important, and ask whether you would still respect yourself if nobody noticed. Once that answer gets honest, walking alone becomes the next trial. Lesson number 2. Walk alone before you seek respect. Chosen by self first. If that sounds lonely, that is because most people were trained to confuse self-possession with social risk. Picture a group dinner where the loudest person sets the tone and everyone else falls in line a little too fast. You disagree, but you can feel the pressure in your chest before you say a word. If I say what I actually think, will I look difficult? Will I lose my place here? That hesitation is awkward in a very human way. It can make a grown man edit his own mind in real time just to keep the room smooth. That is where the real cost shows up. Most people are not afraid of solitude itself. They are afraid of social exile. That fear makes them easy to shape. Once approval becomes oxygen, your opinions get softer, your standards get negotiable, and your identity starts taking its cues from the crowd. Stoicism builds the opposite capacity. It teaches you to stand alone without turning that moment into a drama about rejection. Solitude is not punishment. It is where your judgment stops renting itself to consensus. That is when value starts to change. The man who can walk alone stops broadcasting "pick me." He becomes selective instead of pleading, and people notice the difference before he says much at all. Try one simple rule this week. Do not trade conviction for belonging. Then run the test. Say one true calm thing in a room where you know it will not be popular, and notice whether your body panics or steadies. But standing alone is only part of the work if status can still bend your spine. Lesson number 3. Treat status like weather, not law. Status is weather only. The moment you forget that, someone else's title can start feeling like a law inside your own head. You have seen the scene before. A higher status person walks in and the whole room adjusts. Posture tightens. Jokes get louder. People explain too much. Even smart people start performing. Then you catch yourself doing it too, which is the awkward part. Your voice shifts a little. Your honesty gets polished. Nothing has been demanded from you yet, but inwardly you have already started obeying. That is how sovereignty leaks out. Status is not evil. It is unstable. It moves with money, fashion, roles, platforms, and rooms. The problem starts when you confuse social rank with moral authority. A title can organize a company. It cannot define your character. A reputation can open doors. It cannot tell you what is true. The Stoics were clear on this point. Reputation and station are externals. Sometimes useful, never sacred. That distinction matters because once status feels like a verdict, flattery and intimidation both become forms of control. So keep one sentence ready. I respect roles, but I do not surrender judgment. Then test it in real life. Notice whether your tone, posture, and honesty stay the same with the senior executive, the attractive stranger, and the quiet intern. Score the consistency, because that is the real signal. And once status stops entering your mind like a king, you have to ask who is guarding the gate at all. Lesson number 4. Guard the inner citadel. Protect the inner gate. If you do not, Other people's moods start walking into your mind like they own the place. You know how fast this happens. A coworker is tense. A family member is dramatic. A client brings panic into the call, and within minutes your breathing changes with theirs. Your attention narrows. Your tone gets clipped. The whole day starts bending around someone else's emotional state. That is the awkward part. Nothing physical happened, but your center is already gone. That is why this lesson matters. The Stoic image of the inner citadel is not abstract at all. Your mind is the last territory that cannot be occupied without your cooperation. People can knock hard. They can accuse, pressure, rush, and perform urgency. But they still need your permission to settle inside your judgment. People pleasers miss this because they confuse empathy with absorption. They think caring means carrying. They think being good means taking in the whole emotional spill. It does not. That turns you into a tool. Emotional boundaries are not cold. They are structural. You can hear disappointment without turning it into guilt. You can witness panic without adopting its speed. Keep one sentence ready. I can care about your emotion without making it my command. Then use the reset in real time. Name their emotion, your interpretation, and your next chosen action. Once your mind stops being public property, your effort stops performing for applause. Lesson number 5. Chase excellence of effort, not proof of value. Respect trails character. The trouble starts when you reverse that and make your work beg for a reaction. You know the feeling after finishing something solid. A proposal, a presentation, a hard conversation handled well. But instead of asking whether it was honest, careful, and well executed, your mind goes somewhere else. Will this make them respect me now? Will this finally change how they see me? That question sounds small, but it bends the whole act. It turns effort into a performance and makes the room your judge. That is the awkward part. Even good work starts to feel hungry. Recognition is a terrible foreman. Ignore it and you feel deflated. Get it and you start craving the next hit. Either way, your center moves outside your control. Stoicism pulls the target back where it belongs. Focus on the part that is actually yours. Preparation, precision, restraint, courage, honesty, fairness. That is where agency lives. Respect may follow, but it is a byproduct, not a target you can chase without distorting yourself. Use one rule at the end of the day. Measure today by the standard of my effort, not the reaction to it. Then keep a simple ledger and score your preparation. Restraint, honesty, and follow through from 1 to 5 without mentioning praise once. But even strong effort cannot save a man who keeps saying yes against his own judgment. Lesson number 6. Say no before resentment says it for you. No protects the throne. If that sounds severe, it is only because most people learn too late that every weak yes leaves the door open a little wider. You can hear the pattern in ordinary moments. A friend says it will only take a minute. A boss asks for one more favor. A relative leans on the old line that you are the one who always understands. Your mouth says yes almost on reflex, while your body gives the real answer first. Tight chest, heavy shoulders, quiet irritation. That friction matters because it is often the first honest signal in the room. Ignore it long enough, and private resentment becomes your only form of self-defense. Stoicism does not let you hide from that. Every dishonest yes is a small act of self-betrayal, and, repeated often enough, it teaches people to treat your time like shared property. But your time is your life in visible form. Once spent, it does not come back. So saying no is not aggression. It is stewardship. Not every request deserves access. Not every urgency belongs to you. Not every emotional appeal creates a duty. Keep one sentence ready and say it cleanly. I cannot commit to that right now. Then, practice the delay rule for 1 week. Do not answer non-emergency requests on the spot. Wait 10 minutes and decide from principle instead of pressure. And once you can refuse what diminishes you, the final shift is learning to stop living as a tool in other people's stories. Lesson number 7. Be the sculptor, not the tool. Shape. Do not get shaped. That sounds obvious until you look at a normal week and realize how much of your life was arranged by other people's urgency. You wake up and the calendar already feels claimed. Their deadlines, their moods, their favors, their little emergencies dressed up as necessities, somewhere between being helpful and being available. Your own life slips into a support role. That is the awkward part. Nothing dramatic happened. You just slowly became easier to direct. This is where sovereignty stops being about defense and becomes about design. The deeper Stoic move is subtractive before it is creative. Remove what is false. Remove what is borrowed. Remove what trains you to act against your own judgment. A sculptor does not ask the stone for permission or identity. He cuts away what does not belong until the form is finally visible. That is the work here too. Not becoming more impressive. Not becoming more useful. Becoming more true. Your values should shape your calendar. Your standards should shape your relationships. Your attention should answer to principle, not volume. Use one rule before you accept any role. Ask whether it builds your life or erases it. Then run a weekly test. List your 5 biggest energy drains and mark each one as chosen, tolerated, or inherited. Remove one inherited demand this week. And that is exactly where the old objection shows up, because reclaiming yourself can feel selfish at first. Shape. Do not get shaped. That is the objection hiding underneath all of this. If I stop overextending, if I stop making myself endlessly available, will I turn into someone cold? No. You become easier to read. Selfishness is using other people for your comfort. Sovereignty is refusing to keep using yourself that way. A boundary does not make you cruel. It makes your yes mean something. That is the part people often resist, especially the ones who were benefiting from your lack of limits. They may call your recovery selfish because they preferred the version of you with no perimeter. Stoicism never asks you to abandon duty. It asks you to perform duty without servitude. You can still help, still serve, still contribute. But the source changes. It comes from principle instead of fear, from choice instead of hunger. And that changes how people experience you. Not softer, not harsher, clearer. There is a strange season a lot of people go through where they become the reliable one in every room. The one who answers first. stays late, smooths things over, and somehow gets praised more while being respected less. That is the confusing part. The turning point is usually small. One calm no. One delayed reply. One boundary that feels guilty for about 10 minutes and then restores something solid. Not invincible. Not untouchable. Just visible again. That is when usefulness stops swallowing the person underneath it. Visible again. This is where insight has to turn into behavior. Otherwise, it just becomes one more idea you agree with and do nothing about. Call this the sovereign value challenge. On day 1, write down where you outsource worth. Day 2, spend 1 hour alone without reaching for validation. Day 3, catch one moment where status changes your behavior and correct it. Day 4, use the Citadel reset in one emotional exchange. Day 5, score your day with the effort ledger. Day 6, give one clean no without apology. Theatre. Day 7, run the sovereignty test and remove one inherited obligation. At the end of each day, rate your calm, clarity, boundary strength, and approval hunger from 1 to 5. Perfection is not the target. The real signal is approval hunger dropping while calm and boundary strength rise. Inner sovereignty is the part no one can borrow, rush, or consume for you. Your value is measured by who you are when no one is watching, praising, requesting, or approving. When you stop being useful in the way that erases you, you become harder to manipulate, harder to replace, and easier to respect. If that is the direction you are rebuilding toward, stay with the channel.